What's up everyone and welcome to another Rust video. I'm Austin and today we're going to be doing something a little different. We're going to be doing a proof of concept tour of a circuit that I've been working on and off for many months, and I finally have a working version. I'm calling it the Factory. It is a scalable, modular, autonomous, automatic crafter. It has its main attributes are that it's very reliable. It can be spammed and so far has not broken down. It's wireless. We'll talk about that inside. It has a modular design, so you can scale this up or down depending on the crafting needs of your team. It can be calibrated to craft anything, really. It skips items if the materials for those items are not available without an issue. It'll just loop back around and check for that materials later. It is connectable to sorting systems, so you can connect this to the inputs and outputs to any type of sorting system that you like. It is connectable to lockers. You could send this to vending machines, and in general, it's just a feed and forget system, meaning you just feed it materials, and as long as it has those materials and something needs to be crafted, it will automatically craft it for you and put it into the output box. So quick tour of the inside here. These are the output boxes, these bottom two. This is what I have it programmed to craft as one row of each of these items between these two boxes. The top boxes are not part of the system. It's this little sort of quick bonus thing that I made over here. I will talk about that briefly in the end, but ignore this stuff as far as the actual system goes. Quick tour of the inside. Up here, those are the output boxes, like I said. These are the input boxes. This would be your sorting system, so whatever it is you had going on there. The actual system consists of two primary components. The system control room and the modules. So the system control room is like the brain. This is what sends out the RF signal that it tells these modules what to do and when and for how long. And so this is like it also determines, you know, how much is in the destination boxes. This is where you set those parameters for however much you want to fill in those boxes over there. And so it really does just control the whole thing, and it's wireless. So it has these broadcasters that send out these reference signals, these RF signals that the modules pick up on. So this is how you can scale it, where you can have one system control room and then you just build as many modules as you need, and each one of those modules can, in at least version 1, can handle 8 items on their own. So I have 16 set up in this example. So in the actual modules, they are, again, there's no blueprint swapping going on. Each industrial crafter has a dedicated 4. This particular room is doing, this module is doing these items here, 1 through 8, and that's it. It has a buffer box that maintains a buffer of 2 of each item that's to be crafted in the actual module, plus 1 is maintained in the output of the industrial crafter. So technically it has a buffer of 3. So if someone takes something from this, if I were to just take a metal face mask, once it loops around to that particular cycle, it's going to check. It'll just take a face mask out of here and then replace it and craft a new one to hold in the crafter. And that's pretty much it. I mean, that's the very simple way about it. If I were to, because right now it's not on the face mask, but if I were to go and just blanket take a bunch of stuff here, that it's going to, what'll happen is that once it hits a cycle, and that's a good example. I took that stuff, but nothing's happened. And that's by design, actually, because you don't want it to be able to be overwhelmed. And so there's this cycle that when this timer elapses, it's going to turn on these checks here, which are then going to see, well, what is this missing? What is this missing? And it's going to start pulling first from these buffer boxes in each one of these items, and it will then start crafting those items to replace them. And so if I just start, honestly, just taking random stuff out of these boxes, like say, if you have people in your base grabbing stuff, if I just start removing things and depoting things, the system is going to, once it hits this cycle, which is coming up here, so I'm going to take some more of this stuff out so you can kind of see. It's going to loot basically a bunch of stuff out of here, and we'll just dump it over here for now. That's fine. Okay, and so yeah, here we are about to cycle over. So this thing's going to cycle. As soon as this timer runs out, we're going to hit a new reference cycle. There we go. These things are now checking to see, well, what's missing from these boxes that I just looted all this stuff out of. It already replaced a bunch of it because it took it from this buffer box. And now this buffer box is empty. So it's going to then pull from these first. These are going to then cycle because they've lost something. And so now it's going to bring in the item specifically that it lost, which was this Python. Same thing here. This one's crafting, looks like the scope. Over here, this one's crafting the nothing yet. Oh, we haven't hit that one yet. So this one didn't pull enough yet. So there, oh yeah, there we go. So this one's pulling the kilt right now. And this one's going to start crafting the syringe. And so there you go. And so that's how it's sort of like a chain. So as it's noticing that things are missing from here, it's going to start repopulating them. And then once it's repopulated the full amount of whatever was missing, so in this case, looks like we're still missing a bunch of stuff there. And so it's just going to keep working on it and working on it. And so in this particular instance, I only took things out and I left the buffer items there. So I'm just going to organize this a little bit so I can see better with what's missing here. But you know, this, you know, I'm showing you this with it already having had time to craft things. So if I organize, you can see it's already replaced quite a bit of stuff, and it is in the process now of refilling the buffer box. And once it cycles over, that buffer box is going to be emptied again once the system does a check to see, well, do I have enough over here or not? And if it doesn't, it's going to pull whatever items it's missing, if they're available, from this buffer box and from this buffer box over here. And so once it's completed all that, it will then work to refill the buffer boxes and then keep one in the pipe here for whatever is next. And so once it hits the point where it's refilled everything, the buffer boxes have been refilled, there's nothing else missing, it'll just loop through and keep scanning to make sure that these boxes are full until someone takes a bunch of stuff out of them. And that's pretty much it. I mean, it really is autonomous. It does everything for you. At this point, you know, and I'll talk about this, you know, one of the things I'm gonna talk about here in a minute is you know, what kind of went into building this and why this is a proof of concept first before I try to make tutorials, because this was a pretty wildly complicated thing to work out. But as you know, you can see here, the third row down is on, and that third row is what is this one? This one is the did I hit the right one? Is the MP5. So right now we're on the MP5 line, and we're on the C4 line. So these are paired. This is the actual item. This is its materials it needs. This is the MP5. This is the material it needs, and that's associated with this particular timer loop. Same thing over here. We're on the third one down. These are the, oh, I went to the same one. I do that all the time. These ones are the flashlight, and it looks like the boots. And so it's just going to keep looping through, you know, this one, and then this one, and then this one, and this one in tandem. So each one does, like I said, 8 and can craft 2 at the same time. So it's 2 sets of 4 being monitored and crafted at the same time. So it's actually pretty quick. I mean, the whole thing might be, I mean, it's less than 12 minutes, 13 minutes maybe for the whole cycle. And so in game, it does replace pretty fast. Of course, have never actually made this in game yet. This is brand new, but it can handle, you know, whatever you set the system control to is the loop time for it to monitor and replace. And so every time, I think we're getting close to, yeah, we're getting close to another cycle. So once it cycles, it's going to send out all these broadcasting signals, which are going to be received in here in each of the modules. And so one set is going to be to turn on the particular row that needs to be turned on, and then the other ones actually send a turn off to make sure that the other ones are turned off, so that you can't accidentally have 2 on at the same time, which was a problem. That was a way to get around that. And then it'll just keep going. So the last thing I'm going to do as far as like this part of the video is I'm going to go ahead and just shut the system down, and I'm going to remove everything from the system, including everything that's in these. We just swapped over. Actually, I just heard it swap over. There we go. So it probably just filled a bunch of stuff that was missing. Yep. So there it goes. It pulled some more stuff out that had been crafted, and it keeps doing that. It just keeps filling in what's missing, and then the next round will be these things. Oops, looks like the next round will be these items here, and then it'll be done. And so once it's done with that, it'll just sit there and cycle until it is finished. Again, the last thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to shut it down, and I'm going to remove all the items and show you a cold startup, because this particular thing that I'm showing you now is responding to what I did, but the initial startup, and that was another big hurdle I had to get over, was how do you if something happens and it needs to be restarted, is there going to be a problem? And so I'll show you that also works. So I'm going to shut it down in here. There's a little turn off switch here that shuts down the system control, and then I can just turn these off manually. You don't really have to actually. I just let this one finish whatever it's crafting, and then do the same over here. I'm going to shut these down. Again, once you start it, it's going to auto shut down the ones that need to be off anyway. And right now what it's doing is it's replacing whatever is missing from this output. And that's kind of a huge part of one of the achievements, is that I got it to maintain that set in both of the, where's the other one? In both of the sets here. So this is crafting what? The other bolty. This is crafting, this one's done. And so I stopped it and didn't let it finish. But what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to just steal everything out of all of the boxes, except for the industrial crafters, and I'll talk about why I'm doing that here. And then once these are all empty, we're going to fire it up for the first time, and I'll show you how that works. Okay, so I've emptied these boxes here. The output boxes are completely empty. I cleaned up our little mess over there. And I emptied out the buffer boxes. And so this would represent the system in a state where you've built it or whatever, and it's ready to fire up for the first time, or I guess in a more rare instance where everyone on the team took everything at the exact same time, and it happened to coincide with these safety checks that occur only at the beginning of a particular reference timer. Let's just say all that happened, but more realistically, when you're first firing it up, there's nothing in here. The only thing you have to have is an item that is part of its the crafting item. It needs it in the output. The system is dependent on the fact that it starts with these things in the output. So in this, it already by design self creates and makes sure that those are there, so I don't have to worry about that. But the system at this point is ready to start. And so all I would have to do is turn on the system control and then pick any one of these timers. It doesn't matter because they loop. I'm just going to pick this far left one here and turn it on. And that's it. It's going to start running. These are going to check. There's nothing there. There might be some stuff there because this is going to pass something into the box. Sometimes something gets through. There you go. An AK got through. And so now the system is going to start building everything. So right now it has nothing. So it's starting with the particular line that it's on. So this timer is associated with this top row. And this particular top row is the mask and the AK in this module, and it is the LMG and the rocket launcher in this module. And so this one would have transferred its LMG into the buffer box, which it stayed in the buffer box in this case, and this one would have transferred a rocket launcher, and it is replacing that there, and they'll end up in here once they cycle through enough times. And so right now the system is going to, just from scratch, it is going to build this amount of stuff in one of the boxes, and it's going to build this amount of stuff in the other box. And when it's done doing that, it's then going to fill up these buffer boxes with 2 of each item, and it's going to fill up, this one's going to fill up its buffer box of 2 of each item. And then the final thing it'll do is make sure that it has one sitting in the output as required by the system. And so that's literally it. And I would just wait. I've done this probably 40 times now. It works every time, and it works really, really well. And you just have to wait for these cycles for it to power up. And so once it's done, the actual response time is much quicker. But from the initial system, it's just going to have to loop a few times to build all this mountain of stuff that we want to be in this box. And so at this point, I'm going to take just a little bit of time for those of you who are interested. I'm going to kind of just talk about a little bit about the system, in the design process. You know, this was something that I've been working on. I kind of consider this one of the holy grails of Rust electrical and the industrial update. And I have come up with quite a few iterations of this, you know, some as long as 6 months ago, or, you know, whenever the industrial stuff started coming out, whenever that was, I started working on this stuff. So maybe not quite that long ago, but it was very difficult because, you know, it's one thing to generate a signal or a perfect mathematical like set of instructions that if everything it's about to swap over. This will be a good example. It's about to swap into, I think, this one here. And so once it does that, you're gonna hear the broadcaster switch over, which is kind of a fun. There it goes. It's doing that check right now. There's the safety check. It's gonna pull in whatever is available. There it went. There it goes, and it just keeps going. So one of the difficulties was that when I started building this, I came up with these designs on paper, and you know, if you wanted 3 things to happen in 15 seconds and they were all 5 seconds long, you know, in a perfect scenario that would happen. But in a game in Rust, things run off of the tick rate, so depending on when you do something, the game responds right away or maybe a few seconds later. So for example, you could put something in a crafter and it might, you know, this thing might pull something in and start crafting immediately, or it might pull something in and craft like maybe a second or 2 later. There was this big variance, and so what happened with a lot of my earlier designs was they would break down. They'd be working for a while, and then something would happen. You'd get a clog up in your industrial crafter, or something would do something just entirely weird that I could not seem to, you know, sometimes I couldn't even figure out. And so a lot of what happened with this one was I created a base idea, and then I started dealing with, you know, the actual concept of like what it's doing and where it's going isn't the craziest idea. It's how do you deal with the variability of when crafting starts, when it ends. I mean, in one instance, I suddenly had the conveyor that was sending out the materials to send to the industrial crafter. It would send it out and it would receive it, and then it would start crafting, and then while the conveyor was off, it would suddenly just send another set for no reason, and then it would ruin it because it's so important that the system only craft something, move it here if it's needed. This thing takes it here. You know, I have all these, I had to create all these like safety checks to deal with the variance. That's what all of this is. All this wiring up here, each one of these corresponds to one of these, one set of these, and it creates a time delay that prevents the crafter from accidentally receiving multiple inputs from the same conveyor, because that was like a huge issue I had. And the workaround was this, and I don't even know that it's a glitch. I think that it's related to the tick rate or something. And so when the system is swapping between things, it can sometimes maybe think it got 2 references. I don't know. But whatever the issue was, I had to create these very specific timer delays to protect the conveyor from the industrial crafter from the conveyor, because I kept getting these clogs, and so that took care of that. Same thing with the safety checks here. These things are designed to run only at the beginning of a new cycle, and I did that because I was getting instances where, you know, it was running fine with no one messing with it, but the moment I stole something from this, the moment I took an item from this, if I took it at the wrong time, like let's say I took it right near the end of a cycle, this would try and fix it real quick and then start crafting an item in another item cycle, if that makes sense. And so I realized I had to have this very specific check that only occurred at the beginning. So the system, it might have all the things it needs to replace in here for a cycle, but it's not going to get to see them until the next cycle. And that's not actually for the system. It's to prevent players from taking something from a box right before a cycle change and creating a situation where this is crafting an item while another item is supposed to be being crafted. And so that was a huge thing. So really it was just a series of how do I protect it kind of from itself, right? But that's pretty much it as far as like how it works. I mean, I guess the sort of rundown is the system controller loops through. But depending on what time cycle you're on, you are on one of these sets, and so it's doing 2 at the same time. Of the 8, 2 are being crafted and or monitored at the same time. I have these buffer checks to make sure that these don't double supply for whatever reason that was happening. I've got RF receivers in each module that correspond to the broadcasters in the system control. Currently this, and I'm not gonna get into like power consumption. The modules do require 1 large battery and 3 small car batteries to run. And so they are kind of power heavy, but that's actually not too bad really for all the crazy stuff that's going on here. So each one would require those items. If I make a tutorial, I'll get more into the power, assuming that I haven't made a version 2 by that time. But that's pretty much it. I mean, this controls these. You could build as many of these as you want. You could have, modules 3 and 4 on a second floor, and you could be crafting 32 items simultaneously, and maintaining or whatever you want. So, I guess as far as version 1 goes, limitations, obviously it's pretty expensive. This is not going to be something that a solo is going to do. I went all out. I just used what I wanted to use. I did experiment between wireless and not wireless. So obviously if you go, doing all this wireless requires a lot of tech trash, but the power consumption difference between wireless and wired with what I needed, I mean, if you can imagine how many OR switches I was going to have to use, it would have been almost hilarious. So I just decided that it was worth the huge power savings to go wireless, considering that you'd have to get all that tech trash to make all the wireless components needed for all the different systems. The other thing, it struggles. I have successfully been able to get it to craft stacks of ammo. It is a real pain. I'm actually going to just create a new module that's an ammo module, because the way the main component modules work, they're not ideal for ammo. I was able to get it to do it, but it is a delicate balance, and honestly, I could see how it could create problems. And one thing I'm not going to do is introduce things that would potentially clog the system or break it. This particular system has since this iteration of it, no matter what I do, I can't break it. But as soon as you introduce a stack of ammo, you introduce this possibility. So I'm going to build a very special ammo module that will hook in the same way, hook into everything the same way, but it'll run just a little different, almost a little more simply, honestly, and build stacks of ammo associated with the system control. And so that's what this was. I mean, it's not even important. I just tossed some workbenches in, put on each workbench, I put a crafter, and it just has 1 item in it, and it's just the most basic auto crafting where, if you take something out of here, it's just gonna replace it immediately, and it'll start crafting that stack in there. This is kind of this is the sort of OG way to do it. If you're not trying to get into all the crazy stuff that I got into, you can see him replacing it. But it's 1 item per crafter, so 2 items per bench. You can imagine how many benches that would end up being. It's really unattainable. So whereas each one of these benches is crafting 2 items, each one of these benches is crafting 8 items. So it is a huge difference. So that's, I'd say, the main limitation is, we can't ignore complexity. This is a monster to build. It is an absolute monster. You cannot make any mistakes. I have had to track down stupid things that I've done, and it started behaving weirdly. It's because I wired something wrong or set some timer wrong or whatever. But all in all, as far as the first version of something that I have been fighting for so many months, I'm pretty proud of this. I hope you guys enjoyed this. If you have any questions or comments, or you want to talk about it, or if you want to see it, tour it, whatever, let me know. In the future, I'll probably make a tutorial about this if people are interested. It would be 1 monster tutorial, and I may have to break it up into pieces. But yeah, I'd say that, folks, is just about all I've got. If you have any questions or comments, you can leave them below. Otherwise, you can get me on my Discord. See you later.